Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Kevin Lee. Kevin is a co founder of immi, a better for you Asian American food brand that creates the world's first low carb, high protein, and 100% plant based instant ramen. Previously, he led food and beverage investing as a principal VC at Pear Ventures and is an angel investor in 30 plus companies. Prior to investing, he built the world's largest online product manager community and worked as a product manager at AltSchool and Kabam. He grew up in a food family, helping his grandparents harvest rose apples from the produce farms in Taiwan. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Kevin, welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's an honor to be here.
We're so excited to have you on. Like I said before the podcast, our team has been keeping an eye on you. And it's like, dude, we're so impressed by everything you've done so far. And we want to take this opportunity to hear more about your story. So tell us about your upbringing and what that was like.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. I was born an only child of two Taiwanese immigrant parents. So they came over from Taiwan. Pretty similar story, I'm imagining, to most people on this podcast. The typical immigrant struggles. Came here with no financial, no social capital, and I think they do a thing that most immigrant parents do, which is like they'll leave you with your grandparents back in Asia. So definitely spent a good portion of my childhood with my grandparents out in Taiwan, where they own like a produce farm. So they grow something called rose apple. If anyone's listening, it's called a lianwu, which is like a wax apple,
Tastes
rose
amazing,
apple.
by the way.
Tastes amazing, yeah. So I was oftentimes just like in the fields running around, like helping them like harvest the fruit. And in the US, yeah, I grew up in San Jose, which is in California. And yeah, I can't complain. I think I had a great childhood, two loving parents, and that's the most that you can really ask for.
I like that story a lot, man. And that really relates to, and we'll get into this later about what you're working on right now. Finding the inspiration from your family to create what you're doing is a wonderful mission. But man, like we had an opportunity to look through your LinkedIn, look through your resume, Google your name, and you're like, you've done so much in such a short
No,
amount
not
of
at
time,
all.
right? So I want to hop into your first job and how that shaped you to become the entrepreneur you are today. But also we want to talk a little more about, and I want to give this away to our listeners too, that you invested into over 30 startups already. That's insane,
Mhm.
right?
Thank you.
So let's talk about your first job and how that shaped you to become the entrepreneur that you are today.
Yeah, it's funny. My first job was it was in finance. So back in 2012 when I graduated, um, I went into technology investment banking because I was fascinated with the technology industry, but I wasn't like an engineer, computer scientist or anything. And um, it was in Bank of America Merrill Lynch out in Palo Alto. So I was right next to like the Stanford campus. I would walk onto campus every weekend and just like knock on doors, try to like see if professors would let me like come into the lab so I could just like learn about what they were building. I lasted about 8 months. I think, truth be told, it was it wasn't necessarily the hard work that bothered me. It was that whenever I talked with any of like the associates or the VPs, they actually didn't know much about the technology industry, and it just made me realize like, why am I going this weird circumvented like way to get to what I was particularly interested in? So I luckily was living with a roommate at the time who was, I know I'm kind of jumping the gun here, but basically
Just
I
jump the
think
gun, it's fine.
yeah, it's good because I think definitely, obviously, like I think most people who go in banking, they learn the value of hard work and detail orientedness, and I think those are all valuable skill sets. But more than anything, it just influenced me in knowing that, like, sometimes when you know what you want to do, you just got to go for it. You don't need to take like the multiple steps, i.e., like, some people want to go to business school before they launch into starting a company. I think there's no better present time than now to go do what you want to do. So yeah, I think one day I woke up, just decided like this isn't for me. Uh, there was a client of ours at the bank called Kabam at the time. It was a mobile gaming company. So I think I think maybe some of the founders you're probably well aware of. They were Berkeley co-founders, but mobile gaming was interesting to me because I grew up playing games. It was like, when you're an only when you're an only child, your parents don't speak, like, English is not their first language. They're trying to figure their way out in America. It's hard for you to just like, learn things yourself. And so I kind of resorted to like making friends on the internet. And I think that actually ended up being a super useful skill set, just being able to make friends easily and not stress out about social situations, obviously all online, which is kind of where the world is heading anyways. But Yeah, I think long story short, moved into Kabam, which was my first product management experience. And then that kind of kicked off a whole journey into like the tech space.
That's amazing. I think Kabam's a great space, great company to be a part of, right? Because I feel like, what is it? The co-founder was Asian, Holly Liu or
Hmm.
something, and now she's doing like
Yeah,
an Asian American sort of fund or something. But yeah,
definitely.
like man, like that's awesome to hear about finding and understanding that isn't for me. 'Cause I think a lot of us, especially graduating around like 2010, 2011, 2012, the economy wasn't that great yet, right? So having the
Yeah,
luxury of like, I don't like this job, I want to find a new one, it's like almost unheard of. Just to
for
frame things
sure.
in context for people or listen to the podcast about how different that time period is compared to, well, kind of similar to now, but like a couple years earlier from now, it's like when the job market is great. Okay,
Yeah,
like I'm gonna leave my job every 1 or 2 years and find something else. That's new, right? But
definitely.
back in like 2010, 2011, 2012, doing this is like what? Like we're all struggling to find a job, and here you are quitting.
I know it sounds terrible. I'm like so ungrateful.
No, but that led you down a really, really awesome path in your life and your career, at least. But I think the one part of your resume that really stands out to me is how connected you are to the community in the San Francisco Bay Area. It's like, man, like you practically know everyone there, and
No, no. It took. I think it's partially like I've grown up here my entire life. I went to school here,
yeah.
um, and it's one of the reasons why we were talking earlier. Like I'm excited to move to New York for a while, and then I'll be coming back though, of course, to raise kids. But it's just going to be nice to get out of this bubble that I've created.
I can always bet money you're not coming back.
No, no, no. I definitely
You're gonna be in New Jersey, man.
no, God, no. No offense to anyone listening from there.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your career after being a product manager, right?
Hmm.
And joining the VC world, and particularly
Yeah.
joining Pear VC as a principal investor. That's crazy. Like, how'd you get yourself into venture capital?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I this is something I discovered hindsight 2020, but in the early part of my career, especially even just like entering finance, I would say admittedly, it was probably a more like inwardly, maybe even like selfishly focused career path for myself, where um, I think even when I was in banking, I personally I love education. I've always loved teaching. I taught through like college, even in high school, I taught. And after banking, I had originally like I know I talked about mobile gaming, but I actually wanted to work in like education tech for a while. And when I interviewed for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I like got to the final round, and they were basically just like, "You don't have enough operating experience." And I went to Kabam, and I loved Kabam, and I learned a lot. But after Kabam, I really wanted to get back into more of like a mission-driven space. And so I went to this company called AltSchool, which was education tech. I was a PM there as well. We were building software and hardware for the education industry, and also like building these private schools to test all of our products. And there I came to realize like I had swung way too far to the impact side of things. And I think when I went to venture, it was almost like my whole career path has been swinging from spectrum to spectrum. And that's kind of what life is, right? It's almost like Pandora, you upvote and downvote, and then it kind of like fine tunes the algorithm. So banking wasn't it for me. Product management was good, but it wasn't like, I think ed tech wasn't that either. And so venture capital was, again, a swing back to the other side where I thought, hey, maybe the highest leverage thing I can do is invest in companies that I feel are like doing good for this world. And Pear was an interesting story too, because I had worked at another fund called Funders Club beforehand, and I had gotten to know the Pear team. When I was working at Funders Club, I was also running like a side business at the time called Product Manager HQ. It was this education media company. We built like the world's largest community for product managers. And I remember when I was still at Funders Club, like the associate on the Pear team randomly like tried to buy one of my courses, and she sent an email and she's like, "Hey, can I get a discount? I'm trying to like learn product management so I can help our portfolio companies." And when I saw her email, like it was Pear used to be called pagemonandmar.com. I was like, "Oh my God, I've read this guy's Pagemon story." For any listener, Pagemon is like this legendary dude who escaped the war in Iran, what came to America homeless, like worked at a yogurt shop, then worked at like a rug store selling rugs. And then uh, this was like back in like early 90s. There was like no AngelList or anything. So he would literally go to all these VC and like tech founders' homes and sell rugs to them. And then he discovered that like that's where like all the innovation was happening, and he convinced the rug store owner to open a fund with him and invest in like startup founders. And he became like the first angel investor in Dropbox and like 6 different unicorns. So that's how he started Pear. But I always thought he was like the definition of the American dream, like the immigrant hustle. And so, long story short, coming back to this story, when that associate reached out, I was like, oh my God, I love Pagemon's story. Like, my parents are like Taiwanese immigrants. They came here with nothing. Just take the course, like take anything you need, like from, Product Manager HQ for free. Don't worry about it. I just want to help you guys. And I think this is like a story of just like karma, and like everything will always come full circle. That happened like maybe like 3 years past, but then, when I went and I reached out to them, I remember being able to talk to like the other partner, Mar. She's the other co-founder with Pagemon, and she was like, "Oh yeah, like, I heard about this story from our associate." And yeah, I think like it's just like an example of goodwill. And so always like pay it forward. You never know what's gonna happen.
That's an amazing story, and that's a story where I feel like you deserve a lot of credit too, because it takes preparation that to know your situation and what you're in order to put yourself in the right position, right? Because a lot of people be
For
like,
sure.
"Oh, wait, who is this person? Okay, never mind, just someone asking for a free course."
Yeah, definitely.
But it speaks volumes to your own awareness of your own surroundings, of doing your own homework and knowing a general idea of where you're trying to go. And I think that matters a lot to like leverage every opportunity that comes everything that comes your way and turn that into golden opportunity, like you did, right?
Definitely.
And let's talk a little bit more about your career as a VC, right? Because so when you invested into 30 companies, was that through Pear, or is that through your own personal money?
So the 30 companies is my personal money.
That's
At Pear and Founders
insane.
Club. No, not at all. I can talk more about that in a second too. But yeah, at Pear and at the fund, I don't remember how many investments I did, but we did mostly early stage. So it was always like pre-seed or seed. That's honestly my favorite stage. At the pre-seed, it's literally like 1 or 2 founders working out of their garage. I remember I used to go to some of our Pear portfolio companies, and they were in their garage working, and I would go sit with them for the whole day and just like help them, co-work with them, try to be part of the team. So I love that stage.
That's awesome to hear, man. And uh, how do you feel that experience has shaped you to become the founder you are today? Because I was reading your Crunch TechCrunch article earlier. Dude, you have a whole army of Asian American founders backing your current company. I'm just like, how many
For
are
sure.
there? I'm like counting like 10, 15, 20. I was just like, dude.
Yeah. No, I remember, oh man, that was such a good time. I think, a lot of people don't enjoy the fundraising process. But I'm a naturally pretty like extroverted person. I love, I think talking with people is just like, it's in my DNA. And I think that's why I really enjoyed venture I felt like I was constantly in my zone of genius where, you go out, you talk with people, you get to meet people, you get to learn from like the best and brightest in this world. So when it came time to raise for immi, and I'm sure we'll get into that whole thing, it was just like, it was so natural. It was like I would hit up friends, like I went to like Kevin Lin's house at Twitch. Like, it was like early morning. We just like, I brought him some noodles. He ate them. We just like shot the shit, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'm in. Let's do it." And it's just like that was kind of
It sounds like
the whole
Kevin.
process. I know, it really is. Like Jason Wang too of Caviar, like he has been a long time friend. And I remember it was so random. I was like walking on Embarcadero, and I saw his co-founder Sean, and I was like, "Yo, Sean, like, what are you doing in town?" He's like, "Oh yeah, me and Jason are like in town." So I texted Jason. I was like, "Yo, you want to get drinks?" And over drinks, I was like, "Let me tell you about this instant ramen company that I've been building, or this like idea I have." And then Jason was like, "Well, that's super cool." And then I was like, "Yo, do you want to invest?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course, I'm in." And so it's been an honor, honestly, to have a lot of like good friends, especially like Asian American founders, just be a part of this. Definitely feel the support, and we're trying to just like rise the tide together for everyone.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm still looking at the Thrive Market, Caviar, Daring Foods, Mad Happy, Twitch, Kettle on Fire, and the list keeps going on and on.
Thank you, man. Yeah. I
Yeah,
also I feel bad because I couldn't include everyone on that list, but
yeah,
it's like we have a great group of people for sure.
yeah. Dude, it's just honestly like I'm glad you see the positive side of fundraising, because that's something that a lot of founders dread. And
Mhm.
frankly, it's sort of against Asian culture too to go out there and ask for money, right?
It really is. That actually, you bring up a good point. I think the funny thing is, I wonder if Jason will ever listen to this one day. Jason Wang from Caviar. The first time, so when I actually got drinks with him, the ask I made was not actually for him to invest. It was like, Jason, like, I would love your support. Would you be interested in being an advisor? Because in my head, I was like, oh man, you're the first person I'm going to. Like, I don't really want to ask for your money. You're like a friend. But then I came home and then I was texting with my buddy Tiffany Zong. She was like the world's youngest VC when she was like 18.
Yeah.
And she was like, yo, what are you doing? Like, just ask him. Like, don't worry. Like, don't have like the Asian like values of like humility and like. And I was like, you know what, you're right. And so I texted him. I was like, yo, Jason, like you're already an advisor. Like, you interested in investing? He's like, yeah, of course. Like, it was like a blink for him. And I think that really taught me a lot about like just know your worth and go ask. You just always got to make the ask. So
Absolutely agree with that statement. It's sort of like the same when I was fundraising for Asian Hustle Network.
yeah.
I was like, I spent like a year hesitating, like a year and a half like hesitating. I was like, they won't invest into this until I started asking legitly like 5 people, would you guys invest?
Mhm.
And that ran me oversubscribed and pissed off some people. Oh, crap.
Oh man, that's amazing though.
Like, crap, I don't know how to fit you all.
That's a good problem. We call them champagne problems.
Yeah. But I mean, the more of the story behind this, like, build a good reputation, and because that goes a long way. Like, if you have a bad reputation, you ask for money, no one's gonna give you money, right?
Exactly.
You have a very good reputation, and you know how to ask and not like don't rudely ask and so abruptly ask to be like, just like curiously ask with like a deck and be like professional about it and be ready. It's like, yeah, most likely they'll believe into you. They know your background. They will invest into your company, right? And that goes a long way. Absolutely.
And always give them an out too. Like, I think like you said, like, you can always add that, hey, no pressure at all. Totally understand if like it's not the right time. Like, I completely understand. And you got to give them the out. So yeah.
Definitely. Well, I want to say congratulations on your $3.8 million raise last year.
Thank you.
Huge. I think that's even before we started chatting. But I definitely saw that article. So I'm very happy for you guys. Much. So let's talk a little bit more about your company, dude. And
yeah,
I love the mission behind it. Tell us about your mission and like what you plan to do with the company. And I still want to hear more about it.
For sure. It's funny because like people they'll always ask like, hey, are you and your co-founders like chefs? Are you guys like food scientists? And I think for everyone listening, like, we didn't have any background in this industry. I think obviously my grandparents are produce farmers, but running a farm is completely different than running like a CPG food company. And also when I was helping them, I was just like sitting on like a stool, like like packaging fruit. It's a very different business. When you're sitting in like the Taiwan summer heat, it's not like doing e-commerce or anything like that. So definitely think that it's possible to do like something in a completely foreign industry. In fact, it's sometimes even better, I've learned, because you really just approach things from first principles. You're really ignorant, so like you don't care about what the experts have to say, and I think that'll propel you a lot further. But bringing it back, so my co-founder and I, we're both named Kevins, which makes it kind of confusing, and that's why like online, you'll always hear us use like Kaylee or K-Chan. We basically append our last names. Him and I, we met at Kabam around 10 years ago, and we were like the first 2 PMs because we used to work on the same team together, and we would go to Vancouver for one of our projects, and we didn't know each other that well back then. So like I had just joined the team. We flew to Vancouver. I had a feeling he didn't even really like me that much, to be honest, because we're like very opposite working styles. And I think on his perspective, he was just like, oh man, there's another Kevin. Like now I got to deal with like another Kevin, people confusing us. But one day we showed up in the morning at like the same noodle restaurant, like the student noodle joint. And we were like, yo, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, I just want to get some noodles for breakfast. And that kind of became our thing, where we were like the 2 PMs who would go get noodles for breakfast. And it kind of just like, I bring up that story because it's funny how like all things come full circle. But it was over the course of these 10 years of our friendship, and he later became my roommate, that we discovered that we have very similar family backgrounds. So like his grandmother also sold noodles out of a hawker stall in Thailand. His dad sold noodles out of like an Asian restaurant in LA. And both of our families have very high rates of chronic health conditions. So like most Asians in Asian communities and families, diabetes, high blood pressure are like the 2 most prevalent things in both of our families. So a couple years back, we started talking about this, and we said, well, why hasn't someone built like a leading better for you Asian American food brand? Because we knew we wanted to start a food company. We knew we wanted to do a healthy product, but we didn't want to do just another like protein bar company with American flavors. We wanted to incorporate the things that we knew, that we grew up with, things that uniquely we could do because of our cultural upbringing. So that started as the thesis. And instant ramen was, people are always like, oh, did you do all this market research? Did you like dig into the data because you're a VC? I was like, no, we met in my apartment and we were like, yeah, what do you want to work on? And I was like, we both love noodles, like, but noodles always make us feel like super bloated. And like when you look at our families, like because it's always just like a refined white carbs in noodles, that's probably what's contributing alongside with like rice and other things to the prevalence of these chronic health conditions. So that's literally how we landed on instant ramen. There was no deeper research. And I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, but truth be told, it was fun for us because it's like a product we love. It's a product that we knew our parents would eventually eat, and you don't have to educate people. So that's kind of the genesis. You asked about the mission. It's interesting. I've learned a lot about just like brand ideals. I didn't come from the food industry. I didn't come from the consumer branding world. In tech, you don't really think about things like brand that often, unless you're like, maybe a brand marketer by training. At immi, we've gone through several different iterations. I think now we're comfortable saying that our mission is to embolden people to play by their own rules in life. And at first glance, you're like, oh my God, that's such like a high level statement. It's like Nike's, just do it or something. But it means, I think every single word we've picked there is very important to us, because Cajun and I, we met each other at a mobile gaming company. Like we love like playing, just like having fun while we're doing things is so important to us. We had this amazing culture at Kabam where we've always tried to recreate that culture in future companies, and we just never could, because it was like an environment where you'd walk in and you'd be excited to go into work every day. It was just like fun. We were working on fun things that we cared about. And I think with immi, people always told us, like all the food scientists, all the experts, all the chefs said, there's no way you can do this. Like from like food physics perspective, like it's not like tech where you can like develop a new programming language. Like you're capped. You cannot create a low carb, high protein, plant-based product with these kind of macros and this kind of like texture and taste. And we kind of were just like, you know what, screw it. We're just going to mess around in the kitchen and have a lot of fun. And we were able to make it. And I think it's because we were playing by our own rules that we were able to innovate and invent something that this world hasn't seen before. And so, I encourage everyone listening is like, find like that mission for your company that is uniquely like suited to you as a founder too. It just makes everything, it aligns everything. It really matches like our products too, because instant ramen used to be like this guilty food pleasure that you could only eat like secretly at night when you had nothing else. But I think now like you can eat ramen whenever you want with immi. Like you could literally eat it for breakfast, like for lunch. You don't have to feel bad about it. It's good for you. Like you can add any toppings you want. You can mess around with it. So I think it really like fits the thesis of our product development too.
I love everything about that story and your mission as well. Like I love the fact that I really like the fact that you let nothing hold you back from creating this product, right? Because I think a lot of us as first-time founders, it's like we ask for expert advice, quote unquote. And sometimes honestly, like I feel like as human nature, it's like it's so easy for people to steer towards no, that's not possible. Don't even try it. But I feel like true innovation happens with pure ignorance, which is you don't even know. Like, had you known the steps before, I don't think you would have taken that risk, because
for sure.
But if you don't know enough and you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna figure it out, like have fun with that. Nothing's gonna stop me. That's where true innovation happens. It's where you do the possible when people thought it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So I really like that factor a lot. And for the people listening, especially like first time early stage founders, trust your gut. That's my advice. Mm-hmm. Trust your gut.
Exactly.
There's no one, because the honest truth is like no one can see the vision as much as the founders can.
Definitely.
Right. And that goes a long way of like self-belief, being a little foolish, being a little creative, and just find your own way.
There's also, I think there's one thing I want to add to this, which is, growing up as like the only child of immigrant parents, especially like Asian parents, I think a lot of times, especially when I was investing, I saw a clear delineation where, non-Asian founders, culturally, I think there's just like something different where, when they're raised, they don't have to like worry about like taking care of their parents, or not that they don't have to, but I think it's just like a different culture for anyone listening to this. I'm sure you're all well aware that in Asian culture, it's like we have that idea of, you grow up, you still got to make sure that your family's okay. Filial piety, it's like that term. And I think because of that, it creates a different risk tolerance sometimes for founders. But I would encourage you to just like think about that a little bit more, because ultimately, a lot of Asian parents, this is going to sound terrible, they don't want you to be happy per se. They just don't want to see you suffer. And it's because of that like upbringing they had. But I think you have to really unlearn a lot of these things. I think they serve great purposes, but especially in America, where you look at like other cultures, maybe even like anything non-Asian culture, where the values of like humility like are actually not as important of a value. Like you need to get rid of that, because that's what's going to enable you to succeed in this society. Of course, you have to be humble and hungry, but I just think that culturally there were a lot of things that held me back even from starting immi. And I think that in hindsight, I probably could have started this company years earlier, but instead I just kept telling myself stories like, oh, I want to make some more money, make sure that I can take care of my family, or, like, oh, I'm worried about their like X, Y, and Z. But a lot of those things you kind of have to just like put to the side. And like you said, like you gotta go for it. So
I can't agree with that statement any more than what you just said, right? Because I think that culturally there's a lot of stuff that we need to unlearn. And frankly, again, it sounds really bad, but like I feel like a lot of Asian culture is great, but like to like become an entrepreneur, it's like a really foreign concept, especially like a tech entrepreneur, where it's
right.
You have to unlearn a lot of things, like asking for money, raising money, asking for help. Like
Exactly.
my personal upbringing, it's like my parents taught me that asking for help was a sign of weakness.
Yeah,
Right. So for the longest time throughout my childhood, no matter what I was working on, I kept saying I was fine. I don't need help, because I didn't
for
want to come
sure.
off as weak. Right. But that's like the
Exactly.
opposite of success. Success is
Yeah.
like about asking for help and asking
You
for
gotta ask every day. Yeah.
It just
No, that's so true, man. It's in the beginning of starting this company, I refused to like text people, like text my friends for help. And then now I'm just like, oh man, I text you all day. If you let me text you, I'm gonna text you. I'm gonna ask you
yeah,
for things. So yeah.
definitely. I definitely agree with that statement a lot. And I'm kind of, I mean, lately we started using TikTok a lot more for Asian Hustle Network, and we see your
Awesome.
ads everywhere that
Oh,
starts as, "Hi, we're the
we're the
Kevins."
Kevin. Dude, it's so funny because my co-founder, so I had randomly, yeah, I know that a lot of companies when they start TikToks, they always start with like the founder story TikTok. And I remember telling K-Chan one day in the office, I was like, yo, I really think we should make one of these. I have a good idea. It could be super low budget. We'll just like stitch together a bunch of photos. And we posted it on TikTok and it bombed. It got like 2,000 views. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? Maybe we should test this in paid ads. You just never really know. And that one ended up being such a crazy winner. It's like our evergreen. It's just performed well across like every channel. And I think I've had friends just like randomly DM me and be like, yo, I see like the Kevin's thing, the ad. And I'm like, whoa, we never got this reaction from anything else before. So it's just nice to imbue a little bit of like storytelling into paid ads.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. Lately, we've been using what the one thing that Asian Hustle Network is prideful for like the last or like the first 2 years is like, oh yeah, like we grew organically to 100,000, 150,000 members. We don't need paid ads. But honestly,
Yeah.
paid ads is a hack. Like
It
we
is.
now that we're using it to like promote our conference, which we have in April 28th, 29th of this year, and
Mhm.
like our book, it's like the conversion rates is really, really good. And
It's amazing. It's so crazy because when I started my first business, the product manager HQ one, I took so much pride in being like, oh, I grew it purely on SEO. I didn't use it. Haven't spent any money on paid marketing
yeah,
for the past 6 years.
that's unneeded pain, dude.
I know, and like now in hindsight, I'm like, oh my god, those were like the golden years for paid ads. Like this is another cultural value where in my mind I was like, that's debt. Like using paid ads is putting myself in this debt, and where I need to like not even invest, like I need to spend the money and I don't know if I'm going to get a return. And I don't want to do that because I've always been taught to like, no, my dad was always like, never let yourself get in debt, like pay everything in cash. But you know what? That's the
Yeah,
opposite of like building wealth. It's like, or not the
exactly.
opposite, but like you got to use leverage. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, smart leverage, right? Because
smart
like,
leverage, correct. I don't want to set the wrong. I don't want to tell everyone to get into debt. That's terrible advice.
yeah, I think you have a clear vision of like what is going out and what can potentially come in, and that's a great way to think of it, right? But you have
For
to
sure.
understand where our parents' mindset is like what comes out might never come back in.
Exactly. No, I know. I feel like it's unfair almost for me to say these things. It's like you always want the best for your next generation, and
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be things I tell my kids where when they grow up, they're like, oh my God, I got to unlearn all those things that dad told me. But it's
Yeah.
just based on the situation they grew up in. You're totally right.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about like a very off topic about yourself, right? And
hmm
the reason why I say this because I think I saw a post on LinkedIn like maybe last year or a couple of
hmm
months back about you mentoring someone and getting lunch
Yeah,
with him and him
for
coming
sure.
back a couple years later and then you realize he's outgrown you. And that's
Yes,
honestly as a mentor, that's the best thing that can happen to you.
it
Right.
is.
And
It's a great feeling.
yeah, I want to ask more about like who have mentored you in the past in terms of like helping you understand your own personal development and get leveling up in your career. And I feel like the biggest issue with our community is that the word mentor is often thrown around a lot, like go find a mentor, go find a mentor. But the truth is, a lot of us are really shy to find people and ask for help. Or if they do find people,
hmm
it goes straight to a taking relationship where it's like, tell me all your knowledge now. You know?
Yeah, for
So I
sure.
want to hear some of your personal experience and advice regarding finding the proper mentors to succeed.
So yeah, this is interesting. I've had a lot of different mentors over the past decade, and man, there's like too many to list. There's a lot of mentors that I look up to. Like Eric Bond over at Hustle Fund is one of these guys where I've known him for many, many years. He, the reason I treat him like a role model is because he's not just like, when I think of someone who's like a mentor, they're not someone who's just like one avenue, like, oh, they're like a business mentor. That's all I care about. I think when I look at someone like Eric, he is an amazing like father. He's an amazing husband. And of course, like very business savvy, started his own venture fund, started his own company, sold it. But I look at everything in tandem where I don't want to grow up to be like someone who only has one thing, right? Business success, super lonely, kind of depressed. Like, it's not what I'm looking for. I want a well-rounded life. Those are my priorities. Like great family. I want to be there for them because that's what my parents did for me. And I think that them giving me that strong foundation was the most important thing they could have done. I didn't care if we didn't have money growing up. I didn't care if we had like I didn't have a car or anything. Like the fact was like that love was the most important thing. And so, I list Eric. I actually haven't spoken to Eric in quite some time, which is why like when you asked me that question, I was like, man, I feel super guilty. Like I really should be like reaching back out to a lot of these people because we're all kind of just doing our own things now. But I think he's just like someone who, when he lives his life and I watch him post pictures of him and with his kids, I'm like, man, I really admire you because you're able to balance everything. I don't need you to be like the Bill Gates or like Steve Jobs. You don't need to be a billionaire in my mind. Like you're already a billionaire. The way like everything about your life, you're gonna die a very happy man, and you're gonna leave a legacy for your kids, and that's amazing to me. So I can think of like countless examples like him, but I'm just gonna kind of leave that one there. Yeah.
Yeah, Eric's a great guy. If you guys don't know who he is, he's the founder of Hustle Fund, huge supporter of early stage founders. I love the mission was fun. I believe it's invest into hilariously early stage companies.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean that's great that you're able to like find mentors that you look up to because that does go a long way. And that's one of the reasons why we advocate that reputation does matter. Like we need people that
Mhm.
look like us and sound like us, right? And most importantly, we need to be able to relate to people that we look up to and listen to. And as I stated before the podcast, is that oftentimes we think these founders have some sort of superpower, that they have some sort of edge over the average person. But deep down, as you talk to more and more founders and understand the ecosystem, it's that really no one really knows what they're doing at all times,
Yeah,
right? Not at all times, but most of the time they don't
exactly.
they don't know what they're doing. And
Yeah,
it's all like unfortunately it's all like a front, right? It was like, oh,
exactly.
we want other people to see that we do know what we're doing, but internally the decision making, we all go through our own internal struggles, internal thoughts, internal doubts that we all face. Like
Hmm.
we're human at the end of the day. We feel these emotions vividly. We feel depression. We feel anxiety. We feel sadness. Like you feel upset. Like no matter
Hmm.
how successful you are. And the next question I want to ask is, how do you take care of yourself, Kevin? Like, I mean, if it's okay for you to share, like what has been like your
Yeah.
lowest lows and your highest highs? And we know as in the startup world, this can happen in an instant. Like you have the best morning
Yeah.
and the worst afternoon. You're like, what the hell?
No, exactly. That's how you feel every day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
um, I think so. There's definitely like a practice that I started. I will admit I'm not much of like a meditator. It's something that I'm like trying to do, or sorry, I thought I could do, but man, it's really hard for me. What I find helpful is I do this like a weekly reflection every Saturday morning. The first thing I do when I wake up is I have this like template on my Notion. I've kind of like changed it up over the past, or it took me a while to get to where it is today, but it's a very long doc that I answer a set of questions. And it really is just a way for me to do a retrospective of the past week. Um, it always has like a button it's like, how are you feeling? So you can, put down like excited, nervous, anything like that. It asks me, like what was I grateful for that week? Who was a person that I really enjoyed meeting? And it's just like it's almost like I'm doing a therapy session with myself, because it forces me to seriously think about things. Like when it asks me like, what is the one thing you did this week that was like 80-20 for you? And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, the answer is like, I did nothing and shit. Like I did not have a productive week, or it's like, wait, this thing was super high leverage. Why am I not doing more of this? And then it just like, because it forces me to look at my calendar, like my checklisted completed items, and then my forward-looking calendar. It's just a way to like plan for the next week. So I've actually found that to be the most therapeutic thing. Where, when I was doing my annual reflections this year in December, I used to have crazy anxiety going into January because I feel like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. Like, am I behind? All this stuff. But I realized that this year I didn't have that feeling. And I think it's because I let out all of my thoughts like every week onto this long like Notion doc. Um, and just writing it down was the most helpful thing to get out of my own head.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that helps a lot to be able to like put not just pen and paper, but just type out your thoughts, because you know we feel a lot of things throughout the workday and a lot of disappointments. But I don't think that I think that if we go like weeks and weeks and months and probably years without sort of reflecting a lot and like thinking about our
Mhm.
wins, what went well, what doesn't go well, how do you measure your KPIs of which direction you're heading towards if you don't measure it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do agree with that. I think it's very useful to like sort of just reflect upon week by week and kind of ask yourself like,
Hmm.
are you happy? Are things
Definitely.
getting done? Is your mission still being achieved? If you're unhappy, why? And I think that just
Yeah,
being able to like reflect and critically think about those things, those nuances, plays a long role of your mental health,
for
right?
sure.
And like nowadays, the word mental health is thrown around a lot, and for good reason. Pandemics
Hmm.
going on, a lot of people feel a certain way, and we're seeing you're moving to New York, right? A lot of migrations happening.
Yeah.
We're like, wait a minute, life is too short. Why am I staying in this city? Like, what am I doing this and that? I want to travel. I want to experience some things. I want to learn. So I think
Yeah.
that goes a long way. And in terms of like,
You know what? I have another thing that I was,
sure, go
because you
ahead.
had asked me like what were like the lowest of lows.
Yeah.
Like the funny thing is like when we started immi, um, we had a vision of like what we wanted the end product to be. But when we started immi, we tried to like manufacture internationally at first. We couldn't because COVID happened and international borders shut down. And so we were forced to manufacture with like a US based one they weren't even like instant ramen manufacturers. And when we launched, we actually had to launch with this like, what we call internally like V1 of the product, which frankly was just like not at all optimal. It wasn't anywhere close to what our current version is today. And for, the 8 or so months that product was in market, I was probably at like the lowest of lows ever. And part of it is like that whole, maybe it is like an Asian value thing of like, we want to take pride in our work. Um, and I was ashamed of that product. I know my co-founder was too. Like it definitely appealed to a certain demographic, but amongst like the Asian community where we grew up eating instant ramen, it was I would not I would have given it like a 4 out of 10, maybe like a 3 out of 10. And it's actually one of the reasons why I didn't even approach any of the Asian communities that like, even though like most of my network probably is like Asian people, even like Asian household network, I admittedly have not posted a single time in there about immi because I was ashamed of that product. And I had to go to like coaching, aka it was like therapy effectively to talk about this because I was just like I was basically beating myself up every single day. Like I was giving myself so much negative self-talk. I was getting like depressed about it, and my coach had to really help me like reorient a lot of the ways I was thinking about the company. Um, and yeah, at the same time, I was also running like customer support at the time. So you can imagine like me dealing with all the CX emails about it. It just wears down on you. And I think Will Smith has like an amazing biography that just came out with Mark Manson. And he kind of talks about this where he's just like, every single day we deal with entropy. Like the world is kind of like decaying slowly. You are decaying slowly. And there's really no need for you to like wear yourself down even more with your own negative self-talk. Like the world's going to do that already. It's kind of a shame if you're doing that to yourself. And that really resonated with me. So I think to anyone out there, like don't bring yourself down. I'm not like a motivational talk person. I don't know the right words for this, but just know that like yeah, it for sure will get better. And don't bring yourself down. You don't need to do that to yourself.
Yeah, I really appreciate that story because I think myself at least I have those moments where I bring myself down and then I try to
Yeah.
snap out of it as fast as I can. I'm just like, wait a minute, I'm just wasting time. Like stop feeling
Yeah.
sorry for yourself for too long. It's okay to feel sorry for yourself, but don't take up a whole day or a whole week on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm curious for you, do you have like a practice yourself too? Like to
Um.
manage yeah.
Yeah, very similar to yours. I also reflect I actually reflect every Sunday because Saturday is
Nice.
like the days where I'm just like, it's not Friday. I don't have to worry about starting the week. I'm just gonna blink out Saturday. Like Saturday is my blink out day,
Nice.
right? No one can touch my Saturday. But Sunday is
Yeah, yeah.
when I wake up, I start to feel kind of stressed. I'm like, oh man, like this upcoming
Hmm.
coming week is gonna be heavy. So I do a lot of reflection as well. Like I write things down, things that go well, things that I'm grateful for, things that I can improve upon. And I try changing my
Right.
routine. I'm a very routine based person. Like
Nice.
without routine, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing with my time. I just like, what am I doing?
For
Yeah.
sure.
So out of curiosity too, I know the supply chain issue is causing a lot of spike increases, especially in food prices across the world. How
Hmm.
has that affected your business and your business
Yeah.
model? And like, how are you able to communicate a possible increase in prices and product to your customers in a way where they're like, dang, like I understand like it's not going up too drastically. I think we've
Hmm.
seen some prices of customer consumer goods, especially food,
Right.
sharply increase. Like the price of beef, the price of chicken. You're like, dang, this is so darn expensive now. So
Right.
how have you and Emmy have been dealing with the supply chain issue that's causing like inflation across the world?
Yeah, it's crazy. Actually, like even this morning, I had to have a call with my co-founder because um, it's another. I think part of it is a champagne problem where we have like crazy demand in January, December because it's cold. People want ramen, but we thought we would get shipments, and because of what's going on with freight right now, we're seeing delays from what we thought would be like 1 week stretching out to 4 weeks. Also, like a container, like a boat container, maybe it would have costed you like 7 to 10 grand, a couple years back. Now it's like tripled. It's like 30 grand. Maybe 40 grand. So everyone is feeling this right now, and I wish I had the right answer here because for us, we haven't had to necessarily raise prices. Unfortunately, we just had to eat that margin decrease. But it's more around actually the stretching of like shipping timeline, where people might order product, but we went on back order and we thought we were going to get product in time, but because of the delays, now like a customer gets their order 2 to 3 weeks later than they thought. That's just a terrible experience. For us, proactive communication seems like the obvious answer, and really that is the only thing we can do. Is you send a heartfelt message. Usually it always has to be from one of the co-founders that kind of just explains our situation, and we're not afraid to just say, "Look, we're a very small, like we're a small team. here is exactly what is going on with international freight. And then like at the end of the day, it's still on us. It's not like we're trying to, blame someone else. It's our responsibility for not planning ahead, even including those delays. But just want to let you know that this is happening. And I think usually customers have been really understanding. Whenever we send one of those large campaigns, a large portion of the customer base will reply and just say, look, we totally get it. Like, this is how we see this happening. Some will be like, look, this is unacceptable. And that's totally fine. We'll give them a refund. And we ask for their forgiveness and we say, maybe you'll give us a chance later on. So hopefully we'll get better at this. Yeah, I don't know the right answer though.
But it sounds like you have a really loyal community, which goes a long way, right? And
Definitely.
I think a lot of things you said are good nuggets for us to hear too. Is that transparency and being authentic to your community, your audience base, your consumers, right? What's going on? Because I think if we don't understand what the context of it, a lot of us kind of resort to like anger and confusion. It's like, why are they doing this, right? But
Right.
I think as you take the time to be clear to your customers, it does go a very long way. And I think for the most part, if you're keeping up with the news, like you'll know about the supply chain issue, what's going on, what's causing that.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that nugget. Also, I do want to throw out one thing too that I saw this morning. I actually saw you guys publish in Business Insider this morning as like the fastest product to keep an eye on in like 2022 or something.
Oh, nice. I did not see that. I gotta check it out. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Usually, well, no, thank you. I don't know how true those are. Sometimes those are like really clickbaity titles, or I don't know what metrics they're going off of, but
I did see like front and
yeah.
center your face and your partner's face, like right in the article of this Insider.
Yeah.
So huge
Love it.
congratulations.
Well, thank you. No, for sure. I think we, obviously wouldn't be here without our customers. And I think really grateful that people are enjoying the product. And yeah, man, it's been crazy to get to this point. Like, I still remember like 2 years ago, just like sitting in our kitchens, and there's like one incident where like one of our earliest formulations was like, it had like too much fiber. And so it would make you have to basically like take a shit like really badly. And like me and K-Chen, like we couldn't like, in order to speed up the cycles, instead of making the noodles and then testing it, we just mixed all the ingredients into like a shake with water. And then we just like cheers each other and we just drink the shakes. And then we would just like wait and then see if we had to go to the bathroom. And that was like a whole week. And I remember that was like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. Like we're so screwed. So it's honestly like, it's crazy to remember those times and then to come to like where we are now. It's definitely night and day.
Those are the best times, right? And
yeah, that's
you're
true.
Still early stage too. And it's like, I want to give advice to like first time founders, document pictures and like experiences, because you need to be able to look back and be like, wow, we've grown up, we got a long way,
Exactly. No, I think, like taking photos is so important, and videos. I almost wish we had someone like, a third person who like just documented everything. Now we're all, now even internally, we're trying to operate like a media company. Like we brought on, our own creative director, a creative producer. We're just trying to tell more stories about the brand, and hopefully you'll see more content coming out this year.
Yeah, that's you're doing it right. Absolutely. I think content is key for a product mission-based company. So I think you're doing right. So Kevin, we have one final question, and that question is, what is one advice that you want to give to a founder that wants to do something that's labeled impossible, but they believe that it's possible? So what advice would you want to give them?
Whoa, that is an interesting one. Wow. I think the first thing, well, it's okay. I know a lot of people don't like Elon Musk because like some people think he's like a terrible person, but I think what he just does extraordinarily well is he does question everything down to like, quote unquote first principles. Is like, he doesn't care what has existed before. He will literally like keep pushing you and challenging you until you figure out how to reduce like the cost of something or you invent something. I think with our, when I was thinking about like immi in the early days, it was easy. It would have been easy for us to just like listen to the experts, because these are like food scientists. They have tons of experience. We even had to like network through multiple connections just to get to like the expert, who then would just be like, no, this is not possible. But I think when you like from there, we basically were just like, okay, well, let's go on YouTube and like watch how to make instant ramen. And then let's read research papers and like translate them from like Japanese and Chinese into English. And if when you just try to like learn it from scratch, I think you'll just realize that I think you called this out earlier. It's like no one really knows what they're doing. They just, everyone's kind of just like faking it along the way. And you can do that. You could totally just learn it from your own first principles and you'll probably figure it out. So I don't think, maybe that's not the best advice, but that's kind of what we did. So that's like the best anecdotal advice I could give.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice. That's definitely good advice. Definitely question everything, because I think that personally, my personal philosophy is that everything can be done better, and that honestly, there's really nothing too impossible out there. It just takes a
Yeah.
little bit of be naive, adventurous, persistent, and stubborn to get things done, right?
Exactly.
And you definitely shown that with your products. So I'm definitely very much looking forward to your future success. I'm looking forward
Thank
to
you.
your nonstop ads that plays on my TikToks.
I hope we don't have to run ads, in the long-term future, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely doing well, and you've done so much in such a short amount of time. You're a great
Thank you.
person. Like, we're so happy to have you in the podcast. So how can
Thank
our
you so
listeners
much.
find out more about you and reach out to you online?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on Twitter, Kevin Lee Me, Kevin Leeme. That's my personal. And then immi, immieats.com. We're just called immi, but we couldn't get the domain. It's too expensive, so we got immieats.com. If you want to learn more about the product. For anyone listening, I didn't even talk about it at all. It's the world's first low carb, high protein, and fully plant-based instant ramen. Yeah. So thank you so much. I wish you the best of success too with Asian Hustle Network and everything you're building. Brian, it's honestly an inspiration. I know you invited me here, but I've obviously watched you build this for a very long time. I have a lot of friends that are a part of that community. And this is the first chance that I could tell you honestly why, I personally have never posted in there because of my, a lot of these like that shame I was carrying. So this is very therapeutic from my end too, just to be able to talk to you about this stuff.
I'm gonna
So
hold you
thanks for
accountable.
giving me that forum.
I'm gonna hold you accountable and share your story after this into the community.
Oh man.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
Awesome.
I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye.